Well, friends, our scripture lesson today is taken from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 11, verses 2 through 11. When John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me." As they went away, Jesus began to speak to the crowds about John. "What did you go out into the wilderness to look at? A reed shaken by the wind? And what then did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Look, those who wear soft robes are in royal palaces. What then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one about whom it is written, 'See, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you.' Truly I tell you, among those born of women, no one has arisen greater than John the Baptist, yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Well, I don't know how many of you have finished your Christmas shopping. Who's done? Anybody done? Nobody? All right. Well, one of my favorite stories from my childhood is that when I was 9 years old, I wanted a dog. So I wanted a puppy. I was 9, and I really wanted that puppy. I was hoping my parents would get me the puppy. Then about 2 weeks before Christmas, this big box shows up underneath the tree. Now, there's no air holes in the box, so I'm pretty sure that it's not a puppy. If it is, it's not going to be in good shape, by Christmas. So I had no idea what it was. It was driving me crazy. What is in this box? Well, we're a Christmas Day family, not a Christmas Eve family for gifts. So on Christmas Day, I opened the box, and this is what's in it: a dog bed. We had an appointment the next day to go pick up the puppy. A little English Springer Spaniel, name was Charlie, sweet dog, greatest dog. All right. See, sometimes you're looking for the thing, and what you're missing is the thing before the thing that tells you that the thing is coming, right? The thing that implies the thing. And you miss all those things because you're looking for the thing. And this is the problem. John is looking for the thing. And he says that when John heard in prison what the Messiah was doing, he sent word by his disciples, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" It's like, I thought you were the thing. And I'm not seeing the thing. I'm here in prison. And so I'm not sure what the plan is. I don't know what's going on. I'm disappointed. Now, he's not, when he says this, accusing Jesus of being a fraud, because that's not a logical question. I mean, if someone is scamming you, you don't say, "Are you scamming me?" I mean, what do you expect them to say, right? So it's not about him expecting him to say, "I'm a fraud." Rather, what's happening is this. Greek has 2 words for another. All right? We determine another, these 2 types of another, in context. Greek has 2 different words. The 2 kinds of another are this: a word that means another of the same kind, like you have a cup of coffee and you go, "Would you like another?" Or another of a different kind. "Oh, you didn't want the apple? Would you like another?" All right? So Greek has 2 different words for another of the same kind versus another of a different kind. And what John is asking is there going to be another of a different kind? In other words, I understand you're the Messiah, you were the next one, but you're also not producing what I thought you were going to be producing. So, like nowadays with products, especially in software, they refer to MVP, minimum viable product. So they're kind of like, are you like the minimum viable Messiah? And there's going to be like Messiah 2.0 that comes behind you. Like, is there a plan and then more of a plan? And so Jesus is saying, no. This is all the plan. All right? This is all the plan. And so Jesus says, tell John what you hear and see. Tell him that this is what's happening, and this is actually according to plan. That the blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed. In other words, this is echoing what Jesus did in the Gospel of Luke when he quotes from Isaiah at the start of his ministry. He's saying, this is the sign that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. This is the sign that tells you that the Messiah is coming. It may not be the thing, because, the great accomplishment of Jesus, right, is going to the cross, the death, the resurrection, the accomplishment of our salvation. This is the thing. But all these other things are the things that tell us that the thing is coming. They're the things that tell us that what's coming can be counted upon, that it's reliable. And you need to not discount the signs of what is to come. You need to not discount what it is that you see in advance of the thing that is coming. A few years ago, I heard this great sermon illustration, one of my favorites, and I said, someday I'm going to steal it. This is the day. And what it was this. The preacher said, what's more important, the pizza or the box? Well, everyone would say, the pizza. And he said, okay, now imagine the delivery person walks up to your door holding a pizza on his hand. Are you going to eat it? No. The box is pretty important. All right? The box is pretty important. Remember during like COVID, when delivery people wouldn't even come up to your door, they leave it outside. Okay? All right? If they delivered a pizza, I'm expecting a box. I don't want them leaving a pizza on my porch. I want them leaving a box. And I'm trusting that if I see the box, there's a pizza. Okay? I'm looking outside, and technically speaking, when I look outside my door, I'm not looking to see a pizza. I'm looking to see a box. And then when I see the box, I open the door and I bring the box in. The sign is necessary. The sign is important. The sign gives you the confidence that what's coming is coming. All right? But if all you do is say, imagine someone says, pizza didn't come. What do you mean? All I see is a box. I'm looking for a pizza. You've missed the point. You've jumped too far ahead. You've thought that you're going to see something that you weren't supposed to directly see, when in fact, you were given the sign that tells you that what you are looking for is there. This error that John makes, this jumping ahead, this wondering if there's going to be another Messiah, is an error that Jesus seizes the opportunity to teach about. So in this setting, John's disciples, John's in prison, so he can't go to Jesus. John's disciples go to Jesus. Implicit is the idea that Jesus is talking to a crowd. And John's disciples go to Jesus in front of the crowd and says these questions John wants to know. Jesus, after John's disciples leave, Jesus turns and talks to the crowds about John. You see, I think what Jesus is saying is, hey, wait a second. If John got it wrong, what are these folks doing? And so he says, look, what did you go out into the wilderness to look at? In other words, what were you looking for? He says, look, what did you go out to see? Someone dressed in soft robes? Those people are in palaces. Those are people who've already won the victory. Those are the people who are already in charge. You're looking too far ahead. If you're looking to see the person in the soft robe, you're looking too far ahead. All right? You're not looking, when we look for a champion, you're not looking to see who won last competition. You're looking to see who's going to win the next one. All right? You're looking to see who's coming. And if you look too far ahead, you may miss the signs that tell you who's coming. So we often can miss important signs by looking too far ahead. All right? You look for the box, not the pizza. You look for the signs of God's activity in the world, and that's how you see God. That's how you know that God is active. You don't look for God in the face. We don't see God in the face. We see God by seeing the activity of God in the world. We see God by seeing what God does in the world. We see the boxes all over the place, and we trust that there's pizza. The signs are the preparation. The signs are what gets us ready. And what Jesus said about John, he goes, look, this is the one who will prepare your way before you. He wasn't the one, he was the one to prepare. Remember, in that time, there were people who thought John was the Messiah. People went up to John and they said, are you the Messiah? And he said, no. Yes, he was sent by God. He was sent by God as a prophet. But he was not sent as the Messiah. He was sent to play that role. And in a way, in this idea of process, in this idea of things coming, John's question to Jesus is not crazy. Because at the end of the day, Jesus, when he came as a baby, when he lived, when he taught, when he died, when he was raised, didn't finish. He accomplished what he needed to accomplish. But what are we waiting for? We're waiting for Jesus to come again. So in a sense, when John says, are we to wait for another? Jesus is both the one to come and the another who's coming behind him. Because he came once and he's coming again. So he's both the once, the now, and the not yet. We can almost think of it as Jesus 1.0 and Jesus 2.0. The one who died, the one who was raised, and the one who will come again. Because God is executing a process. And God is executing a process. And when we execute a process, what we focus on is the next step in the process. One of my favorite business books of all time really guides the way I think. It was this book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. I don't know if any of you read it. Great book, sold millions of copies. It's probably 15 years old, 10, 15 maybe, I don't know. And there's 4 disciplines, and they're this. Number 1 is focus on wildly important goals. Okay, that makes sense. Focus on your goals, all right? In faith, we're focused on eternal life. We're focused on salvation. We're focused on eternity with God. That's the wildly important goal, because we understand that this life will pass and then we have an eternity with God. That's the wildly important goal. But number 2 is to act on lead measures. Lead measures are the things that if you do them now, you know will lead to the goal. Okay? And that's all you worry about. In fact, 3 and 4 just keep you honest on number 2. Number 3, keep a compelling scoreboard. That's about keeping track of how you're doing on number 2. Number 4, create a cadence of accountability. It's making sure that people on the team are accountable for number 2. And the understanding is that if you are keeping track of how you're doing and you're accountable for how you're doing, if you take care of number 2, the lead measures, number 1 will follow. It's like this. Who's been on a diet? All right. Real temptation on the diet is to jump on the scale and jump on the scale every day. And I'm going to jump on the scale every day. But what do you really need to measure? Your calories and your exercise. If you are measuring your calories and you reduce your calories, and you are measuring your exercise and you increase your exercise, you don't need to worry about the scale. The scale will take care of itself. Reduce your calories, increase your exercise. The scale can wait. The scale may be your goal. The scale may be what you want. You want to lose weight. But what the lead measure is what you're eating and what you're burning. Take care of that. Like he gave us really simple example. They worked with a company that did valet parking for like hotels and stuff. Okay, they contracted out. And customer service was not measuring that well. They tried all these other things that weren't that important, like make sure every guest is greeted. Make sure you hold the door open for them. Okay, that's nice. But at the end of the day, they understood there was really only one lead measure for customer satisfaction on valet parking. How fast do they get your car back to you? If they get your car back to you in 3 minutes instead of 5 minutes, they don't care if you greeted them and they don't care if you held the door. So what did they do? They said, system-wide, we're going to work on what it takes to get cars back faster. How they do it? Things like during downtime in the evening, they went into the garage and they tried to figure out which cars were likely to be claimed earlier than others, and they moved those cars to the front so that you wouldn't have to shuffle cars to get them out. The cars that were going to be claimed later, they put them at the back. And they constantly, during the day, reshuffled what they believed the cars that would be called next would be at the front. By doing that, everything else took care of itself. Customer satisfaction went way up. All right? What are the lead measures? And what are the lead measures of the life God desires for you? What are the things that you can do right now, that you can track right now, that you can pay attention to right now, that will help you get to the life that God desires for you? You need more peace? Maybe you need a break. Maybe you need to go spend time walking in the woods, and maybe that's your lead measure. Need to be kinder? Check your temper. And then maybe I'm not going to lose my temper today, or maybe in my case, I'll try and reduce it from 7 times to 6. Whatever it is, that's going to be my lead measure. All right? What are the lead measures of the life God desires for you? The things where you know that I can measure and focus on these things right now, and if I do that, the bigger picture will take care of itself. The rest will take care of itself. All right? Because what you do now that leads to the goal will get you to the goal if you do it. So you just start doing it. See, ultimately, what we do is bigger than us if we do it well. This is what happened for John. Jesus says, what then did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, and more than a prophet. John did his job as a prophet. He did his job. He clearly didn't understand the full scope and scale of the plan that was to come. He just knew that he had a job to do, and he did it. And when he did it, the long term took care of itself. And this is also the danger on the flip side. Bad habits, you may think, what's the harm if I do it now, if I do it once, if I do it a little? It will catch up to you. The good or the bad. The lead measures for good or for ill in the short term in our lives will have ramifications in the long run. And what we keep our eye on is, if we can just keep our eye on the short run, if we can keep our eye on what's right in front of us that we can control and measure and be accountable for right now, the long term takes care of itself. Everything we do should be chosen understanding that there are many things that will result from it. The long-term objectives are achieved or failed based on the short-term measurables that we choose to execute or not. So we have to be careful, to be dedicated to the short term, because that's what we can see. That's what we're allowed to see. See, there's this enigmatic last verse that Jesus has about John. And he says, "Truly I tell you, among those born of women, no one has arisen greater than John, yet the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he." He's not talking about merit. He's not talking about John being a better or worse person than anyone else who ever lived. After all, he's not saying he's better than Moses. He's not playing the comparison game. Rather, what he's saying here is that John didn't have the privilege of seeing what was to come. John would die in prison. He never got to see Jesus fulfill his ministry. He never got to see Jesus raised. We've had that privilege. We've had the privilege of understanding that Easter is coming. We've had the privilege of understanding that the crucifixion was not the end of the story, and that the resurrection was coming. But like John, we've not had the privilege yet of seeing what is to come still. We've not had the privilege of seeing Jesus return yet. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't in this life. But we have to have the faith to act as John did, to do the job that he was given at the time that he was given it. We have to have the faith to do now what it is that we can do, what it is that we're called to do. To do those short-term measurables, those lead measures on moving the kingdom forward, confident that as we do them, it means what is to come will be. We need to stop saying, we need to be, or at least we need to be happy to see the box and understand that the pizza's inside. The signs are there around us that God is active in the world. The signs are there around us that God is still working God's vision for what is to be. Is that the end goal? No. Those are all boxes. They're all boxes. But they're signs of the pizza. They're signs of understanding that God is still working out the process, is still working it through, and that everything that God has promised to us, everything that we're waiting for, is going to be. And this season of Advent, this season of waiting, is a reminder that we wait confident that what we're waiting for is going to happen. Every year, we wait in the 4 weeks of Advent for the birth of Christ. And every year, it happens. And that's practice. to become people who go through life waiting in confidence for what God is going to do. Amen.